Welcome to the Follow-Up Podcast, a podcast that believes at its core the single most important oriented belief that if Jesus was right about God and life and the human soul, then it would make sense that we rearrange our lives around what he said is true. So that's what we're exploring. All that Jesus said was true and how to rearrange our lives around it. Where'd you grow up?
I grew up in Southern California.
Okay, what was great about growing up in California, Southern California, Carter? What'd you love about it? And how did it shape you?
I grew up in a small town called Camarillo in Ventura County between Malibu and Santa Barbara.
I know that place.
You had a cool breeze, 72 degrees every day. You had
72 degrees.
72 degrees. You're close to the water. It's bunch of people on their bikes riding around. We played travel soccer and basketball, and it was great. It was a great spot to grow up. You're 40 minutes from LA, 7 minutes from the beach, kind of away from all of the crazy hustle of LA, but close enough to still get there.
So do you ever? Because your sports loyalties are very eclectic, and obviously we've forementioned oftentimes your love for Chicago sports, but you live in an area that I would say is the antithesis of California in Chicago in a bunch of ways, right?
Yeah, well, I think what's funny is in 5th grade, and you could call up Andy or Ken or Troy, we all wanted to purchase those starter puffy jackets, but we were afraid we were going to all show up to school with the same team.
Yeah.
And so I think it might have been Andy or Troy or someone said, we should have a draft.
Oh, that's a good idea.
And so we put our names into a hat, and I got the second pick. Ken got the first pick. And Ken,
what year was this?
This is 5th grade. So this, I'm like 9 or 10 years old.
Okay.
And so Ken chose the Lakers. He loved Magic Johnson because of Jordan and WGN, which allowed you the chance to watch the Cubs. And so I'd come home, or during the summer, would watch the 120 games. So that was a huge piece. And, the Bears had won the Super Bowl. And so, they were the monsters of Midway, the Super Bowl shuffle. Just nothing was cooler than Refrigerator Perry and Walter Payton and Jim McMahon. So I just kind of adopted Chicago, not ever thinking I ever moved there. But then many years later, moved there and felt like it fit hand in glove. So
okay, Luke, our producer, what was it about you came from Arizona, the desert.
Mm-hmm.
Then you lived in Southern California. What? Tell me about how that shaped you, SoCal, because you talk about Southern California a lot.
I'm so glad you asked, Eric.
Luke doesn't get a mic very much, so this podcast could end up taking a very long time. Luke's already screwed it up.
I grew up in Arizona. Born in Scottsdale.
Yep.
Raised more in Tempe, Chandler area, around the ASU realm. Moved to California when I was 20.
You talk about Southern California quite a bit. It shaped you a lot, seems like.
Yeah, the water.
Yeah.
For sure.
What about it?
I mean, I grew up vacationing to Southern California. But yeah, moved out there, surfed all the time, spearfished all the time, dove.
He spearfished.
Love the water.
Look, we're 10 episodes plus in, and I felt like before we pivot out of this is the last episode in our prayer series, it's probably important that people get to know a little bit about the yahoos that are on the other end of this microphone. So spear fishermen, which is, it's fine. Whatever.
California.
How old were you when you were there, Carter?
I was born and raised.
And
then I left when I was a sophomore in college. and for like a year, and then came back, graduated, and then was in Grand Rapids, and then came back for about 5 years, and then I haven't lived there.
It's been a while
since I was 30.
So go back to formative years of your life. Maybe it's there in California, maybe Arizona. I'm not sure. But do you ever remember, what's the first prayer you remember asking God for something? Do you remember one? Do you remember as a kid, like something you wanted so bad that you asked God for it?
I think the first prayer of like wanting something was, you get your allowance and you went straight to the baseball card shop and you opened Upper Deck and you won that Ken Griffey Jr. rookie card.
See, I didn't buy Upper Deck, only Tops. Yep. Tops only.
But when that Ken Griffey Jr., the amount of like prayers that I prayed before I opened, and I had no idea. I was just like, please, Lord, get me this, God. Get me this. And no. And you just go through them. No. All right. $4 more for a pack. You're just like creating an addict in the midst.
So good.
Or I think there was a Christmas run where I wanted a white mongoose bike, like a BMX bike, you know. So those are the first two.
I mean, in fairness, I honestly want some things as a kid, but to be truthful, in my mind, when I think about what I remember praying for and interceding for was a girl.
Oh, yeah.
First time I remember like legitimately going, God, she's so pretty. I would really like her to be my girlfriend.
That's amazing. The first thought that jumps in my brain is I came home and it was early November, and I was a young kid. I might have been like 4th or 5th grade. And I went to a Christian school, but my parents weren't Christian. They just put me in there. And my dad was stressed, which wasn't unnormal, but I just said, you okay, Dad? And he said, if you want Christmas this year, you better pray that Michael Dukakis doesn't win the election. I did not know who was in the election, but I went upstairs and I prayed, Lord, will Michael Dukakis,
oh my gosh,
why would he take Christmas from kids? Will you please not
strike him down?
Not let him win? And then he didn't win. And for the longest time I was like,
there is a God.
I caused that.
My prayers were heard.
So there's a reason why we're sort of digging into this, because as we turn the corner in our prayer series, so we're in the prayer series, we've been looking at different forms of prayer. We're rounding the corner in the final form of prayer, petition, like the stuff that you ask for. And there's a reason why we put it last versus first, because most often if someone is asked, hey, tell me about what prayer looks like for you, it typically, if they're honest, is about the stuff we ask for. And we almost know it from an early age. Like, that's a funny thing, like that you prayed that you really wanted Christmas and you knew how to do that. You just asked for it. But I think petition is slightly misunderstood, but it does come really naturally. And what we're trying to do is, I think it's really important. It is part of prayer, asking for things. It's definitely part of prayer. It's just putting it in its proper place, right? And understanding, like, okay, how does this whole thing work? Because I don't want anybody to listen to the podcast and think, oh, well, if I asked for things, that was a bad thing, because that's not true at all. It's just like, how do we put this prayer that actually comes pretty naturally? Like, we were doing it as kids for all kinds of things, from inline roller skates to, girlfriends. We know how to do it. How do we put it in its proper place? And that's really what we're going to try to explore, is like, all right, what does petition look like? Where does it fit? How do we do it? So that's the episode. So Carter, let's talk a little bit about petition. And I said this. We put it where we put it on purpose because I think it's important that adoration, confession, lament, and thanksgiving really are precursors to placing our heart into its proper position. But could you talk through that a little bit? Like, why do you think having petition? We don't want to get rid of petition. That's important. Scripture tells us we can bring our prayers to God. But talk a little bit about the importance of petition, maybe in its order and where we place it and why it's important.
Yeah, what's interesting is I think this is lament and confession and petition are probably the three that I just didn't know how to do.
Wow.
Which sounds like when it comes to petition, it's not a holier than thou. Like, it's not like I didn't pray for stuff for myself. I just, I often will say, like, kids are very perceptive. They're just crappy interpreters of reality. Like,
I love that.
I remember someone saying, like, God knows all. So God knows all. Like, so the way that my brain interpreted that was, if I share something out loud, then I must not believe God knows all.
Wow.
And so for the longest time, I never prayed asking for it. I didn't pray for if my friend's mom was sick. I didn't pray. Like, I thought it.
Yeah.
But I thought, like, well, God knows all. God knows my prayers. He doesn't need to hear them from me. And it wasn't until years and years and years later that I realized, like, why wouldn't I bring my requests to God? Like, if in a healthy relationship, there's something that, because we've all had those moments where, you know, Chrissy probably asks you, Eric, like, hey, what do you want for your birthday? And you don't name it, and so she has to guess. There's something when you actually have the agents to say, like, hey, this matters to me, and I'm actually bringing it to the source.
I think that's huge, Carter. You're right. God knows it, but this part of prayer, it's what we've been saying along the way. This is part of relationship. It's he knows the data, but he's looking for relationship.
Right.
And that's really huge.
Yeah. So it was not out of, like, not centering myself. I just didn't pray.
Wow.
And again, it wasn't modeled to me. I would keep my eyes closed and listen. And, I was really judgmental of how people sounded when they prayed. Like, every other word was like Father God, or they sounded like I just not. It's not about them. That was my own just brokenness and having to figure it out. And I think it just came to a point where do I want to have a relationship? Like, and it was a mentor of mine who just said, like, it feels like you want all the benefits without relationship.
Wow.
And
that's huge.
And I think in a lot of my life, that's how I lived.
You've said some things too, because I think part of it is a big part of this is the relationship, but I also think, like, asking, it forms you, right? Because part of the process is how do you talk about naming your desire. There is something in the process of naming your desire. Could you talk a little bit about that? Because I've heard you oftentimes, like, in meetings, you and I have worked together. Yeah. There is something in naming this deepest part of you, this desire, that's really healthy and good.
Yeah. I think that's where it came. Part of it was because I grew up in a system where, and Alice Miller writes about this in The Drama of the Gifted Child. It doesn't mean like gifted and like brilliant. It means you grew up knowing what your parents' desires were at the expense of your own desires. I knew how to take care of my parents. I knew I knew what they needed. I knew what success looked like for them. I didn't know how to name my own desire. And so part of health for me was to recognize, hey, desire is good. That's okay. And then to be able to recognize I can actually bring those desires to God. He actually welcomes them. In Philippians 4:6, it tells us by prayer and petition with thanksgiving, bring your requests to God. And that word petition is the word demos, and it really is like with this humility and with this earnest bringing those desires before the one who can hold them. And I think for me, that was an exercise actually in faith. One, that he wanted the desires. Two, that he cared about those desires.
Yeah, totally.
And that three, it wasn't about how I named my desires, like, oh, I did it really well, so I'm going to get it, or I didn't do it well, so I'm not going to. It just was in a sense of, Lord, this is important to me. One of the things that Eric has heard me say, and people who've worked with me know this, is I think great bosses don't name another person's desire.
Wow, yeah,
And
you're good at that.
And they create the invitation for that person to have the agency to do that because it's their own formation. And there will be times, Eric and I have been in meetings where I'll literally say to another staff person, hey, I think we're in a desire standoff. I have my desires for you. It's not my job to do that. I want you to know what you want, because if you can't name that, then all you're doing is you're working to try to appease somebody else rather than going, this is actually what I want.
Yeah.
And I think the same thing's true in relationship with God. There's a humble, earnest naming of the desire, but at the same time, almost like Jesus, not my will, but your will be done.
But it seems like there's a subtle in naming your desire, right? You say, hey, God, this is what I want. There's also in that, bringing it to God, a recognition that you, when you said trust, it's what came in my mind. Well, I actually can't make all this happen on my own. When I bring this thing that I want to you, whether or not you're articulating it, isn't there almost a recognition, even in the prayer, that I can't make this thing that I truly want happen on my own? I actually need your help.
Yes and no.
Okay.
So the yes in the things that matter, you're 1,000%.
Yeah.
In the smaller petitions of the world, no.
Yeah.
If you want 1,000 followers on Instagram, you can go buy them, and you don't need. But that's going to affect the person that you become. You know what I mean? If it's something that is the formational, the kind of person that you're tapping into, the Lord's will, which again is a phrase that gets misinterpreted all the time. It's not one job, one college. It's as Ortberg will say, it is about who you are becoming, more in line with the character of Jesus, the magnificent person of his image. When we have our desires aligned with that, and yet we can surrender that to God in his forming of us and trusting that he's going to do it, then yes, 1,000%.
Okay, so let's walk it through the framework of the last 5 weeks. Yeah. Isn't that why it's really important that the framework that we've laid out, that you start with adoration, right? Because isn't it true that left to myself, the naming of my desires with me at the center of the universe tends to look a particular way. But when I first start with adoration and I place God where he truly deserves, when I then confess my brokenness, when I lament the things that really haven't gone the way that I hoped they would, and then I give thanks for all that God has done, does it kind of center you in that, then the last phase of petition, right? It sort of centers you, or it has the potential to center you.
Man, I knew you had flipped it for this way.
Yeah.
But it is fascinating when you do flip it the other way, and you start with petition, then the adoration of God is circumstantial to if he answered your petition.
That's right.
But if you start with the adoration, you're giving him the glory he's due. There is a sense of surrender. I'm not at the center, but that forms you in how you make your requests.
It sure does.
Parks, the way that you set that up, that I didn't see that fully the way you just named that, but that's, and again, I think so many of us, our adoration and thanksgiving is all circumstantial.
It's all circumstantial. And I think part of, if you look at the Lord's Prayer, actually this rhythm is built into the way that Jesus prayed. The neuroscience behind it's really interesting because of how it does what it does to our brains, that our petitions flowing out of these formational pieces have the potential to look fundamentally different than what we talked about. All of a sudden, like, the relationship is recentered. It's different. And so I think that's why I never want, I didn't want to set up petition as like this wrong thing, because it's not wrong. It just needs to be rightly ordered.
Well, when we were living in Grand Rapids and we got this kind of opportunity to go out to California, to Rock Harbor, we were trying to sell our house in 2008 in Michigan, Big Three, which just was a tough time. It was just like a tough time to sell a house.
Yep.
And my petition was simple. Lord, let us sell our house. Just, I can't do 2 mortgages or 1 mortgage and 1 rental, because that's what we could afford in California. Like, I can't, like, please. And I asked Sarah, I'm like, hey, what are you praying, like, in regards to the house? And she said, I'm praying that the right family moves into our house. And I was like, don't pray that. I don't care about the
What if that
family.
family's 5 years from
Exactly.
now?
I don't care about that. Like, that could be months or years away. And
yeah.
she's like, but don't you trust God? Don't you want our neighborhood to flourish more? And it was just a different, you could tell by her prayer, it started with adoration, because she had such trust that God was going to provide, and he was going to bring the right family into that neighborhood. And mine was solely practical. Mm-hmm. It was solely trying to be efficient, and it was solely meeting my personal agenda.
Yeah.
And again, I'm not saying it was wrong. It's just not the same.
Not the same
power and prayer.
Well, one of the things I've been encouraging people to consider, and all of what we've talked through and all that we wrote about were these different frameworks to explore this is about relationship. You keep hitting that. I think that's so important. Like, we're engaging in a relationship. We DTR this relationship. We define it really clearly. But one of the things to consider is, what if you practiced each of the 5 forms that we outline? Like, on Monday is a day of adoration, and on Tuesday is your day of confession, and on Wednesday is your day of lament, Thursday is your day of thanksgiving, and you don't petition until you get to Friday. You don't petition until you've worked through it. Now, you could do all that in a day, right? It's easy to do all this, but honestly, working through a very specific rhythm where, for me, here's why I think that's important. 1, we live in a culture of instant gratification, and so we expect that to be true in our prayers, right? Like, especially around the petitions. Like, hey, I need my house sold. God, let's go. This is what my desire is. I need my house sold. Or I need this thing. Or I need you to show up in this way. And usually patience, that's not, we're praying typically out of something immediate. There's an immediacy. Just the process of waiting till Friday to ask of anything
Yeah.
is a discipline.
Yeah.
Where I begin to teach myself rightly placed petition is really, really important. So it's something that I've been toying with, is like, well, as I work through this, that's not to say you couldn't do all 5 in a day. Of course you could, but placing petition at the end of the week, letting that be the last thing I do instead of the first, I just think it's doing something in my heart.
Yeah. I think the right placement is huge. The only small tinker I would have, based on something that, and again, the prayer guides are so beautiful, and when you sent it to me, adoration was so powerful, is in that even as we went to the different kind of postures,
totally.
I tried to keep adoration
I hear
every
that.
day,
Yep.
almost like just to recognize, like, I adore
always
you,
start- yeah.
so I can confess, or
Yep.
I adore you, and that you actually hear my lament. I
Yep.
adore you. And I bring my Thanksgiving, like, just because I
there's
thought the
something
way
to
that
that.
you wrote that,
Totally.
or the team wrote that was just like, was different than I had understood adoration before. And so that'd be
I
my
think that-
only little piece.
Doug said the same thing. Was he was actually at one of our prayer practices where we were practicing these things, and he said something similar where, hey, if we get this adoration piece right, all these other things flow from them really well. I think it's brilliant. I think there's something brilliant to that.
Yeah.
So.
Can I ask you 2 questions real
absolutely.
quick?
Yeah,
2
please.
questions.
Do it.
One, you've had 3 kids. 2 of them finish college.
Yep.
1 about to go into college. When you watched I imagine one of them at least, have a named desire to go to a school, and they didn't get in. And you had to see that look on your kid's face. My son had early decisioned at Northwestern, didn't get in. And it was so hard. Now we look at the other side, hindsight 2020, he's where he's supposed to be, and he's so fired up and like wouldn't want to go to Northwestern right now. But for a couple weeks, that was a hard piece when you see your child name their desire and it doesn't come out. So one, how do you walk through that well with people in your congregation or your own self, or when you've named that desire and it's like, I think Anne Lamott says, God answers prayers with 3 ways: yes, no, or not now.
yet. Yeah.
Not yet. And like in the not yet, how or no, how do you hold that? And then 2, what are you petitioning God right now for?
Well, I think part of the prayer of Thanksgiving, I had mentioned this a few episodes back, or 1 episode back. For me, whether it's with my child or with myself, when God answers a prayer in a different direction than what I want him to do, what I desire him to do, I just remind myself of the instances that I remember and can see that he didn't do exactly what I wanted, but I'm really glad that he didn't, right? Because I have them. You just mentioned it with your son, and you can see it now. It's hard to see it in the moment, but we need to store those things up.
Yeah.
So part of this is storing of those things, because there will be times when I can't trace his hand. I don't see it, but because I have before seen it, I can trust in this moment that he will be faithful. And that's part of, I oftentimes will talk about the prayer petition. Naming it's important, but the last piece of the prayer petition, releasing it to him, is equally as important.
Equally.
That means, yes, I name it.
Yeah.
But then the last step is, but I trust you with it. And I'm going to hand it to you. And that's not to say that you don't come back to it. In fact, the prayer petition is something where I tell people all the time, it's enough to release it for today.
Yeah.
And tomorrow you may wake up and it's going to be on your heart and you're going to pray it again.
Yeah.
That child that's, wayward, the broken relationship. And that's okay. You release it. It's enough for today. So release it for today. But that release step, that's really, really important because we don't know. And I can see, but it is equally important that you just like release it. And then, you ask, what am I petitioning God for? Honestly, my petitions, you guys are parents. I find myself praying about my children a lot these days. And it's really been beautiful. When you send your kids off to college, oftentimes you're like, well, it's over. I told the joke about, Daly when we took her to college, saying as I was giving her a necklace, she's like, Dad, I'm not dying. But sometimes you feel that way, and what I've recognized is all of these seasons have a beginning and an end, and they're all beautiful and sad, but there's new seasons and new chapters. And so I find myself praying for my children a lot these days, just older we get, the more you realize you're not going to be here forever, and you see your grandchildren starting to be born. So I find myself praying a lot for my children, that they would learn some of the stuff that took me lots of years about relationship with God, what prayer means. Honestly, what life, I hope that I've passed on a few things about faith and how this world works to them. So I'm petitioning the Lord a lot these days on behalf of my children, that God, you would just make yourself known to them, that all that we've poured into them would come to life when it needs to. And so that's a lot what's on my mind. How about you? What are you praying about?
I think it's that active release. You with your kids, you try to help them recognize what is possible, and then they have those moments to achieve that, and you realize they're not really yours.
Yeah.
And your job is to launch these rockets into the world. And so it's just really hard when you really like them. And I look at your scenario right now, and it's like everyone's coming home to Colorado. This first time since I've known you, 10 years,
yeah, 10
that
years.
Everyone will be around.
Yeah, it's a blessing.
And that's a gift. And just recognizing that might happen with your family. But for 10 years it didn't happen, but it might happen in 10 years for, who knows? But it's that release of, I trust you, God, that you've got this world and you've got them. But that's a control, and that surrender of control.
But I think that's a good example. I prayed for 10 years. God, would you bring my kids? Would you bring them home?
Yeah.
But for 10 years, I'm like, but it's your will.
Yeah.
Like, hey, the release of, I love that word that you use, release. It's like, God, whatever you see fit. And I sit in this moment going, doesn't mean it will always be so, but, I pray for my desires, but I release it to you to ultimately know that, hey, you really do know best.
It's Jesus in the garden. Take this cup.
Take this cup.
But not my will, but yours be done. And I think that's such a healthy way to approach petition. I can name my desire, but at the end of the day, may it be your will, and may your will be done. As we wrap up this 5-week prayer follow-up series, I imagine that many of you, whether you're in your car or your office or on a walk right now, maybe you just want to kind of put this into practice. And we actually want to create that space. And if you're like me and Eric, we've been really trying to begin a lot of our days with a moment of adoration. And what we want to do is we want to give you a space right now, some music in the background, But wherever you are, whether as Eric likes to do with pen and paper, or if you're in your car and you want to speak it out loud, or on a walk, just kind of whisper it. But what are the names, the characteristics that places God at the center of the story and allows you just to look up at a holy and good God? Take some time right now, write it out, speak it out, pray it out, and just bring adoration to our holy God. And then we've been looking at confession, lament, thanksgiving, and petition. Which one of those four do you need just to spend some time in? We talked about confessing. We just talked about kind of the owning and letting God search you. And is there something that you just need to own right now and bring before God and experience and receive his forgiveness? Is it the lament? There's something that you're just having to sit with the why, and you imagine God giving you that sledgehammer and you just need to be honest and human and just say it ugly and say it with your chest. Or is it a thanksgiving, and there's something that you are just beyond grateful for what God has brought forth, and that you just want to bring and give thanks back to the one who has just given to you? Or is there a desire that you need to name right now? Something that you're longing for, maybe for yourself, maybe for a relative or friend. But if we could all, no matter where we are, not just bring adoration, but bring the vulnerable confession or lament or thanksgiving or petition to God right now. We want to give you that space because our God is with us, and our God hears and longs for every part of us.
So now let me pray these words, originally penned by the Apostle Paul, found in the book of Ephesians. And he writes, "For this reason I bow my knees before the Father, from whom every family in heaven and on earth is named, that according to the riches of his glory he may grant you to be strengthened with power through his Spirit in your inner being, so that Christ may dwell in your hearts through faith, that you, being rooted and grounded in love, may have strength to comprehend with all the saints what is the breadth and length and height and depth, and to know the love of Christ that surpasses knowledge, that you may be filled with all the fullness of God. Now to him who is able to do far more abundantly than all that we ask or think, according to the power at work within us, to him be the glory in the church and in Christ Jesus throughout all generations, forever and ever. Amen." if you're interested in finding out more about these prayer practices we've been talking about, one of the best ways you can engage is through our prayer guide. You can find a link in our notes to find out more about grabbing one of those guides and starting a 25-day journey practicing all we've talked about. So that's going to do it for today. If something landed for you in this conversation, don't just let it sit. Take it with you. Carry it into your week. Talk about it with somebody. Let it do something in you. And if you want to go deeper, click on the link in the show notes. We'll be back soon with more. So until then, keep following up.